Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby! We're back! Well, I'm back. Hello. Hello, everybody, yet again for another week of Tourney Ground. I've got a couple of things we're going to go through today. It is going to be a shorter episode. Unfortunately, my schedules and all timings for everything have all been messed up. So, yeah, going to give you a shorter episode today, which I know, unfortunate, right? You won't get to hear my dulcet tones to the same extent that you normally would be. And, you know, I know that people will be missing out on the quality content that this mouth spouts forward. That's a joke, by the way. Just to discuss a couple of things. We've got some recaps and stuff I want to go through, some things looking forward to as well, of course. And then also kind of like where we're at in terms of waiting for the patch and kind of like what that will mean for what's kind of going forward as well, a little bit. So yeah, we'll just discuss all of that today and see where we get to. So I guess the first piece of news, for want of a better term, is the Frozen Shore Hunters. Frozen Shore Hunters being the free folk archers that throw pilum harpoons, a million meters, as per their definitely designed, intended way. These guys have hit the US stores. They have been seen in the US, bought in the US. This one courtesy here of Free Folk Sam on Discord. Sculpts look all right. I think the sculpts, I know I slammed the sculpts a little bit, said they looked a bit boring. I'm a bit more impressed now that I get to see them physically. I don't think the renders did them favour. I do also like the resculpted or alternative or the original Walrus Clan Chieftain sculpt. I quite like that version of the sculpt. It's better than the guy with the double-handed hammer, which I think is fine. Like, I think he's a fine model, but I much prefer this guy. These guys are out, and they are indeed long range. For some reason, some people were saying, "Oh, they're not long range; it's a misprint." And they're not. They are very much long range. It's not a misprint. The hopes and dreams of salty boys everywhere, let's put it like that, were dashed upon the rocks of Pike. So we'll see how this all kind of pans out, I guess, with these guys. I've shared my opinion on them, probably too much. In terms of what they mean for free folk, in terms of what they mean for kind of like internal faction balance, but also what it means for game balance. And I think I'm not going to detail with it today, but I am kind of perhaps a little bit more pessimistic than I normally am around what this means for free folk in the next patch, in the next update, which we still haven't heard any news on. We're still looking at this year for the update. We're still looking at kind of March, April, May time is kind of like what people are predicting because of this yearly release schedule that we've kind of been told that they were going to go by. But we don't know that for a fact. We're kind of hoping for that. I think that I like the sculpts. I think the sculpts are great to some extent. I know that Powell in chat says he doesn't like them. He hates them. I can see why. I do think it is unfortunately a bit of a variation on what is the current Raider sculpt. Really, I don't think it's much more than that. There's a bit more to it. There's a bit more kind of like ornamentation, a bit more going on with them. But the base model is very similar to that of Raiders, and I will take it. I enjoy painting. And Roderick here, who's very much in early stages, I enjoy painting, but I enjoy painting by spending time on it, which is why I quite enjoy painting characters. I enjoy spending time on characters that I actually like in the game, trying to make things, and I'm not the best painter in the world, but actually trying to get things to an accurate standard. So I'll show you this very quickly, and this is not looking for praise or anything, but this is what the kind of thing I mean, is that I will happily spend a long time painting Victarion there, trying to get the gold cloak right that he's supposed to have in the lore and everything like that. I'd much rather spend like 2 or 3 hours, or even longer, 5 hours, 6 hours, achieving that. Now, I'm not a great painter. It takes me a long time to paint. I like to take my time over it. But the kind of like, it's really weird. Like, Slapchop has become kind of like the method of painting that's kind of being shared around recently. And I'm not a big Slapchop kind of guy, even though it emulates my painting style and quality very similarly. It's just not my style. So painting hordes and hordes and hordes of raiders was a task unto itself, and I put it out there. I didn't enjoy it, right? And I know that some people say they enjoy that kind of thing. I do not enjoy painting rank and file troops. It's not my cup of tea at all. I'd much rather paint monsters and characters. With that being said, I do think these guys are going to get a bit of a spruce up in my army. Should I get a box soon? Mix them up, paint them somewhat slightly differently. And Imperial Mini says, yes, they have oven mitts, though, and that's a distinction that can't be overstated. It is true. So it's been a long time since it happened, but somebody painted up Free Folk skin changers. Seen them like Santa Claus and stuff like that for senior builders. And the skin changers with the bears, it was like the Care Bear bunch. I would really like to see somebody come away and paint these guys in effectively like oven mitt design, kind of like kitchenware like ideas. So things like, I mean, the classic ones, oven mitts in the UK, you get classic things like little birds on them, or like doves or something like that, or like love hearts is a classic, or even just like tartan oven mitts would be. I want to see people do that, and I think there could be some fun there, and it is silliness, but a fun one. So yeah, Steve just messaged me there. I know Steve's listening. Frozen Short Hunters throw the spears about the right distance if it's a skirmish game. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough for Steve's opinion on that one. Yeah, if it was a skirmish game. Unfortunately, it's not a skirmish game, Steve. So yeah, they have long throwing arms. What we actually don't know is that they're all actually carrying harpoon guns, and by harpoon guns I mean harpoon cannons, because yeah, that's lore appropriate. Paul, I've just spent about 10 hours painting one elephant. I hate and dread painting 12 units at a time. Yeah, same, Paul. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy rushing through stuff in painting. I enjoy taking my time over. I won't say I'm efficient. I'm not an efficient painter. I will load up a picture. I will sit here, for example, and do exactly this. I will load up a picture. I will jump into. So I just do Victarion, right? Or actually, I've done Asher recently as well. But I will. I said I was doing Roderick. So I will literally load up a full-scale image like that and try and paint that to that image as close as I can. But I also compare that with any kind of like lore book entries. So I might go for something like wiki. No, it's not going to find it that way. I'll try and find the Song by Sunfire wiki if you've not used it. So I will jump to specifically this page here, Roderick Harlaw. And I'll look at their appearance, I'll look at the way they're described. I don't remember it exactly. And you can see, for me, there's no definitions here of what any kind of like defining thing about their attire and what they wear. So then, I can just follow the art. With Victarion, it's quite clearly listed that he has a certain style of cloak, and that's very important within his lore and within his character, that he's made apparent by this yellow cloak, yellowy gold cloak that he wears. It's actually a gold cloak, but trying to paint gold that isn't shiny is a nightmare for someone of my paint skill. So yeah. Anyway, that's that was a random aside that I went off on. So yeah, it's a big thing. Don't like painting rank and file. But yeah, they're out. They're out. The Great Walrus Clan Chieftain doesn't have Iron Resolve, and I was joking today that this card is, or this box, for want of a better term, is like 9 to 10 months out of date by the time it's released. Like the stuff in it is like literally 10 months out of date, or one of the cards is. Now that is a joke, obviously. It's no doubt that this stuff was printed and designed probably before the balanced patch. So this was due to be, and I think people forget this, but it was due to be released into an environment it was tested in, and the environment it was tested in may have been on the old balance patch or with various changes. Now that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It doesn't attest to its balance. I can't comment on its balance in those things. I wasn't there for those games. But what I can tell you is I don't think this is a particularly good unit to be releasing into the current balance of the game. And it's and rightly so. I think a lot of people are annoyed. A lot of people are annoyed because they see it as power creep. I don't, and this again always comes off the wrong way, and I think people think that I'm somehow defending bad decisions. But I don't think that this is power creep. I think that this is on curve, and that's a problem that it's on curve, because a lot of factions are receiving stuff that's slightly below curve, or maybe it's just about on curve, whereas this is on curve for free folk, and we know that the free folk curve is higher than everybody else's, which is again part of the balance issue. So it all plays into this same idea. Like, this is not different, and this all comes, as I've spoken about before, about a core issue with the way that they're designing and the way that I think that they should balance free folk. And I actually did a thing on it last week where basically I said that as it currently stands, free folk aren't balanced, and if certain aspects of design aren't changed, there will probably always be things in free folk that are not balanced. And that doesn't mean like they could get nuked from eternity, and I still think they'll have aspects that won't be balanced because they play into the core mechanics of the game that make them strong. Activations is a strong thing in the game, and cheap units play into that. Like Greyjoys. Greyjoys is a perfectly good example, right? Greyjoys have got activation counts which are very much competitive. They play around with competitive activation counts. We spoke about it last week. But their base deck is not good. Like, it doesn't have good timings on the base deck, among other things. And the unit quality it gets for its point cost. Greyjoy Bowman considered very good at 4. Trappers considered okay at 4. Like, they're playable at 5 with Asher, basically. Or Asher Commander, I guess. At 4. But then, like, Reavers not considered good at 5. Reapers really not good considered 6. We see kind of stepping in at 7 Silence Men, sometimes Iron Makers. Black Tide Chosen I know is popular in some areas of the world, but like all these things at 7 that aren't particularly popular. Drowned Men at 4 considered maybe as fringe playable. And that's the thing, right? The units aren't complete and utter garbage. They're not good by any stretch, but they're not complete and utter gutter trash. They only need a small amount of love, but the base deck's a long way behind, and the activation count is good. And the faction, when you give it to a strong player, will do very well. There are good Greyjoy builds, I should say, out there. But that doesn't mean the faction as a whole is good, and the Greyjoy curve is just so much lower than the Free Folk curve. So you're talking about having to make this faction, to make Free Folk balanced, and to make Greyjoy balanced, you need to bring Greyjoy units up a little bit. You need to bring the Greyjoy deck up a little bit. Maybe as a couple of commanders have little bits of shifts. I mean, Eric Ironmaker, what the hell? But with Free Folk, you have to address the base deck. I mean, I've spoken about it before in detail, but Endless Horde is a stupid card. Like, it breaks list building convention, and list building convention being broken is bad. So Endless Horde needs to change. There's too many. People hate it. People absolutely hate There's Too Many. It probably needs to be changed because it's too powerful, and people hate it. So those are two outliers that I would say that definitely need changing. I'm not going to touch the subject of Mance. He's his own separate thing. And to be honest, Varamir as well. But this is the thing, right? It's not just one or two small changes. I think it used to be one or two small changes that would have been enough, but with the release of Varamir and what I think is going to be an untouched Varamir going into the next balance patch, then they need to make significantly other changes. And if Varamir is the only competitive commander next patch for Free Folk because everything else got nuked from orbit, I wouldn't be unhappy. And when I say competitive, I don't want Varamir to be strong. I want Free Folk to be a bottom to, second, third off bottom faction, because at the moment, and Free Folk have been top for so long, and at the moment they're so far ahead of where they need to be in relation to the things at the bottom, that it's fair time that they had some time at the bottom. With that being said, I don't think these guys will see any changes, which a lot of people, and that's I think what people rouse people up. But yeah, sorry, a bit of a negative one to start with, guys. It is what it is. It's a very contentious release, I think, in the competitive community, because for a lot of players, we look at this and go, God, they're pretty good at 5, and they're pretty much beating every 4-point unit in the game, and they are pretty much trading fairly with a 6-point unit. And I don't think that's a mistake. I think they've deliberately designed to do that, but that in itself is a problem. That being said, yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll see how it all pans out. Yeah, so that's them anyway, in their release and what it might mean. I won't be running them because they're probably not going to be out in the UK for a while yet, so I don't have to factor them into how I build lists, and I don't think about building lists anymore for Free Folk. Done that, been there, got the t-shirt, and yeah, it's not that it's not fun. I still really enjoy it, but it's just I don't dedicate the same time that I used to, which is a shame. It is a bit of a shame. So yeah, that was the first thing to cover today, the small amount of news that we got. We've had no other news from CMON, no other release news or anything like that. But on that topic, we are still waiting to see Lysini Pirates. We're not just waiting to see Lysini Pirates, we're also waiting to see... Brazen Beasts. There we go. I couldn't remember the name. Brazen Beasts as well. Haven't seen anything for those except the renders. We know briefly. We know that Lysini Pirates have pillage, for example. We don't know what that means on them. We don't know what it means on for Brazen Beasts. We think Brazen Beasts have Sentinel, just based on the discussions. But the last time we thought a unit had Sentinel, we got Castle Rock Honor Guard. So, rip. Yeah. We haven't seen Cranagman yet, I don't believe. I haven't seen Cranagman in the wild. That's a lie. That's a lie. I may have seen Cranagman in the wild. Just because I can't remember where I saw them doesn't mean I didn't see them. I'm sure there will be some somewhere. But yeah, Cranagman's seen, and people were wondering about what poison meant and what that could mean. Because when they see the units, they don't see the poison mechanics. We've discussed them before at length. But yeah, it's good. I mean, in my opinion, it's good that we're seeing the cards and the units getting released when they're getting released. This is not... I'm going to be fair to CMON here. This is not that far off what I would expect from a release date. This is not far away from what we would consider being on time. These were touted for December. And if anyone doesn't know, there was all kinds of issues in December this year. So they've not done badly on this front, at least for the US. We will see about Europe and where it all pans out in the end. Okie dokie. So that was the first thing. No other news, unfortunately. I think CMON are still looking for somebody to run an event on the FLG calendar in the Bay Area. So if you're in the Bay Area, do check out FLG and CMON's post about looking for a TO for the Bay Area for the Song of Ice and Fire tournament happening in that area, run by FLG. All right, so that was the first thing. Second thing I wanted to have a little look at is, well, we were going to look at the team tournament lists. Unfortunately, there was a couple of rogue entries on the lists, so Mikkel has had to reopen list locks for a couple of people. They did the checks and everything, I think, yesterday and today. And Mikkel has had to get a couple of people to kind of reconfirm lists. So They're not available for us to have a look at today. We'll probably have a little look at that next week. Also look at the events next week. The results. Get my words out. Of that event next week, because I think that'll be quite an interesting one to have a little look at. On that note, though, we did have running this week the Canadian Open. This one here, the Canadian Canadian Open, ran this last week, and I'm not going to say it's a surprise, but they ended up getting 18 people on the day. 18 people showed up, and Ariakas was very kind to send me a little kind of brief of how it went down. Now, Ariakas, obviously, regular appearer on the show when he's available. The time difference makes it difficult. And yeah, every faction was represented at least twice, except, interestingly, Targs, who had 0 appearances. Neutral and Lannisters only had 1 appearance as well. So it was a relatively even spread across the factions, except those Lannisters and Neutrals falling down a little bit. And as I say, no Targs, which is an interesting one. No Targs is certainly an interesting dynamic. Martell's obviously largest section that we can see here, and you know, Martells have been released in Canada. They are a popular pickup in Canada since their release. Martells, I don't, you know, it's a smaller event at 18 players, but Martells end up going overall win rate of 83%, 10 out of 12 games win, non-mirrors, with the winner of the event, Danaman, Daniel, with his Harmon Oberyn Ulla combo. I think he played Harmon for most. Yeah, he played Harmon for all of them. Didn't end up using his Oberyn list. So yeah, overall pretty good from Danaman. And Abiscius in chat there with his Martells coming in at second place. I think he lost, to double check. Yeah, he lost in the final game in a Martell mirror. Harmon versus Roos. Be interested to see Jordan's choice of running Roos into that mirror matchup. If he did want to share any thoughts, I'm sure he will on stream, his own stream when he does his own stuff. And if you haven't checked out Abiscius' streams, do check them out. They're usually pretty fun and a good time. So yeah, unlucky Abiscius. Sorry that you lost, but obviously congratulations to Daniel. Free Folk did have a strong outing, but no one finishing near the top, but a very, very strong outing, 63% win rate. Less than perhaps what people might have initially stated. Mance not doing as well as he normally would do, but you know, we're talking about a small event and we're talking about relatively low numbers of games here. I personally think that Free Folk has still got favourable matchups into Martells. So, you know, that is a thing. But that being said, you know, Jordan took one out. Did Danaman have to play into any? No, Danaman didn't. But Abiscius took out what looks like to be the highest performing Free Folk player there as well. So kudos there. Yeah. Still, my consideration is Free Folk best. But it's good to see that it wasn't Free Folk winning the event. That's nice. Always nice to see. Yeah, so do check it out there. Clarence was absolutely over the moon, and all 3 of the top-rated Canadian players, as on the stats ranking, were present at the event, which is fantastic to see. You know, the event was effectively at least a combination of the cream of the crop from Canada that we know. Basically saying the mission is big for the Free Folk Martell matchup. Yes. I think mostly. What did you play? You played Here We Stand. Okay, Here We Stand. Yeah. If the Free Folk player doesn't know what to do there, that I can imagine the Free Folk player having big issues there, probably just straight up losing to Doran. Which is worth it. But yeah. But it's an interesting one. Yes, so well done for the Canadian event on that particular event. Obviously happening in mini war games. The big thing that we were talking about is happening in the mini war games bunker. Now, for those of you who don't know what the mini war games bunker is, it's a relatively prestigious YouTube channel. and location, obviously, where they run miniatures war games. They obviously do a lot of stuff for 40k. That was their main thing. It's got some fantastic facilities there. If you've never seen mini wargaming on YouTube, do check them out. The guys over there have made a really interesting kind of dynamic between store and online content and stuff that they've done there. But the good news off the back of this is that Clarence was saying that having some Song of Ice and Fire on their stream and having Clarence go in, play some Song of Ice and Fire with them, and getting some more popularity of the game is potentially on the cards off the back of the event, which is great news. Love to hear that. That is fantastic. So yeah, well done for running the event. I'm really glad it went really well. All of the feedback so far that I've seen from anybody says that they've seemed to really enjoy the event, that it was great work. So kudos to Clarence and of course the guys over at Mini Wargame Bumper, but also the players, from attending and generally being good people, which I can say a lot about for the vast majority of the Song community. That's interesting. So people saying there was a lot of chatter around Dora and NCU in the Canadian Open versus the Refuge event, where didn't have issues. Canada didn't have issues finishing games, but the refugee games couldn't get past round 4. So the other event that did happen was the Refuge event happening in Ohio. Just quickly load it up. There we go. So the Refuge event was held. This was won by good guy, all-round good guy, Chris Tran, with his Greyjoys. Stovetop coming in second, both undefeated, going into that final, the final kind of like rounding there. 16 players showing up to the event. Now, what's super interesting here is, yes, exactly what Carl says in chat. Games weren't, generally speaking, going beyond round 4. And I think that that's quite an interesting one, that games not going beyond round 4 was common. I don't know if that's just because I have different expectations of the game or something like that. But games should be resolving in 4 rounds. If you look at Chris, Chris is just an example, but a lot of the games he's playing 7-0 in Clash of Kings, that is unlikely to have been 6 rounds. But Doran scoring 2 points at the end of round 4 or round 5 or whatever it is that Chris would have scored, it's not going to change the outcome. Chris is probably going to score maybe 2 more, maybe even 3 more points in the next round. It's unlikely that the Martell player is going to pull this game back into a win over what would be a loss. Doesn't mean it might not have been crushing. Chris Tran may have found it really hard to get to 10 before Doran got 6, or the Martell player got 6, but I think it's very unlikely. So I don't think it makes a significant difference. Certainly not when you look at players that are doing very well at events. That being said, it is an issue. Stephen's saying that Chris versus Stephen is happening this week as well, Stefan. So they're going to decide who the real winner is, Martells versus Greyjoys. But if it's anything like the stream I saw from Stefan the other day against Chris, the real winner is the audience. So there you go. More content and time to watch 2 great guys play a game is always good. I do think that the Martell issue or the Doran issue going to round 4 is certainly something that needs to be brought to attention. And when I say brought to attention, I don't mean we need to be like, oh my god, games must finish. But it needs to be considered as a thing that TOs might have to work around or consider or maybe push. The French event had a rule where if you don't get to the end of round 4, like there's punishments. I don't dislike that massively. I'm not a big fan of it because I think you should never rush people playing. You should never make people play faster than they're comfortable with. But there is a problem with time disparity between 2 players. If both players are playing at a certain speed, and that speed is not quick enough, then I have no issue with that. Not no massive issue. That's the social contract, if you will, between those two players is to play at that speed. It's the significant difference that me and Carlo spoke about before, where there's a massive speed differential. Um, one of the things we always talked about with clocks, the clocks wasn't really about trying to make sure people had time. It was trying to make sure there was no significant difference in time spent. Carlo had gone from the outset, and I always understood his reasoning. He always thought that people would spend different amounts of time, um, and that's not a problem. It's when the amount of time they spend is significantly different. Um, and I know people disagree with that. People didn't like that. People had issues with that, and there were problems with that. But yeah, Abiscus saying that time per round would need to vary. Yes, um, I am not massively against. Yes, and he's right. Not all rounds need the same amount of time. I'm not massively against a method that like chess uses, but it's almost impossible to regulate in a mass event that doesn't use individual clocks on tables, and at that point, you're going to have problems really. Because again, you're adding all of these problems into games which don't need to be added, and don't make the game better, even though it does solve a problem. But yeah, I'm a big fan of a system where you have a 10-minute kind of call, if you will, for setup. If setup's taking you longer than 10 minutes, there's an issue. I think it shouldn't take you any longer than 5, really. But and you can do it most of the time before the round even starts. But some people take a long time. So 10-minute round game, or 10-minute kind of like setup, if you will, is what I would allow. Then off the back of that, assuming you've got a 2-hour round, 2-hour round, 10 minutes off that is going to be 110 minutes. And 110 minutes you can split between 6 rounds fairly equally if you want, or you could look at in a 1 hour and half, 1 hour 30, which would be a 90-minute game, 5-minute setup, then 85 to play the remaining 6 rounds. Round 1, 10 minutes. Round 2, that's 10 minutes between 2 players, or 10 minutes per player. You'd have to decide, of course. 10 minutes per player makes a massive difference because you now just doubled the timeout. But you have 10 minutes per player for round 1. That could be, yeah, so 5 minutes setup. You don't need 5 minutes per player. 5 minutes for setup. 10 minutes per player for round 1. 10 minutes per player for round 2, 10 minutes per player for round 3. That's an hour and 5 minutes. You then have 25 minutes, so I would give 7 minutes maybe for round 4, and then remaining time for round 5 and 6. Or you could cut, if it was an hour and a half long, you would have to cut that down to be much lower, more like 7 minutes or 5 minutes per player, or 7 minutes per player. So yeah, that would be a thing that I would consider. But again, Chris is completely right. Chess clocks would deter newer or casual players in real life tournaments. Completely agree. The game is not designed to play under. Like, this is actually, I think, a thing that people forget, is that until something becomes commonplace, it's very hard to introduce new systems. Not impossible. But chess, you're introduced to time format in chess. If you play even remotely close to anything online or any chess with people who play chess, the first question they'll ask is always kind of like, what time format are we playing? Casual players of chess will still use time formats, like when hustlers play down on the street, they still use time formats. Most of chess is played in time format, even the stuff that's casual. Really, the only stuff that's where people are playing not under a time format is when people are playing with nowadays like chess engine style stuff, which people do. There are chess engine tournaments, and the other one is casual players. And when I say casual players, I mean people who legitimately are like, oh, there's a chessboard, do you want a quick game of chess? I mean people who maybe they literally don't know opening theory, there's no understanding of lines necessarily. None of that side of the game is necessarily being followed. Now, that doesn't mean they're not playing chess. They're still playing chess. But yeah, the game as a standard now is like these are the rules of chess, and you play in a time format, and that's widely accepted. New players to this isn't chess. This isn't chess. They would not be widely accepted in the same way because they might not have played under chess before. Chess clocks. There's no mention of chess clocks in the rulebook whatsoever. So I do think there would be a natural barrier there, and I don't think that's a good barrier to set just because we have issues reaching round 6. So yeah, think time for events is dependent on venue opening hours more than anything else. To some extent, yeah, it is. That's true. Time for events is based on opening hours and based on venue times more so than the event itself. That is true. Chris saying he's never played a tournament match that went beyond round 6. Fair enough. Played a couple of. I can think of many that have gone to round 6 that I've played. I can also think of a very prominent game where we played to round 2, which round 2 is not good enough. That is a problem. So yeah. Cool. Good to see that Chris won though. Chris gets to take away the trophy for now, pending Stefan and Chris's matchup. I wonder if they do actually swap the. I'd be impressed if they swap the trophies. Or is Chris gonna just be like, nah, I won the event. We'll just do the matchup for glory, not for the actual trophy. From my experience in 40k, learning to use the clock makes you a better player by becoming more of a thinking time. Yeah, it does, Tim. I do think it does. And I think that it's actually very odd for a lot of players. I don't think it makes a difference for when we say competitive players. When we played under clock conditions in London, there was only really a couple of times. It's actually the game against Jacob, because the way Jacob uses the clock, and this is not any dig at Jacob whatsoever, but Jacob was incredibly, for want of a better term, aggressive with the clock, in that it was like the moment anything would happen, it would be pause the clock. Almost like his hands ready, like waiting on it, ready to press it. And that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. But there were times where it's like, do this thing, and it's like tokens or whatever. Put a token on a unit, and I'm like looking for a token at the side, and he's like pressing the clock on me already. And I'm like, Jesus, I'm literally just trying to find a token because it doesn't seem to be one in this pile of tokens I have. And that's fine. I do think that we shouldn't be looking at the game in that way. There's a difference between playing quickly and rushing, and you should never make somebody feel rushed in table, especially in table management. That's a big thing for me, is table management. I see so many people poorly manage a table that they lose cards, they lose effects. They're like, oh, where's this thing? I don't really know what's going on. I don't know that it's had this token or whatever. Like, table management is a big thing for me as a player, because it should be clean for me and my opponent. And if we both don't have a mutual understanding of the status, for want of a better term, of everything on the board, then you have a massive issue. Like, if you don't know the status of everything on the board by looking, there is a problem, because that means there's hidden information somewhere. Now, who that information is hidden from depends. That information could actually be hidden from both players because they both made the mistake, and that does happen. But it's still, like, for me, I don't like playing like that with like bad table states where mistakes do happen, right? There's mistakes happen. People miss things all the time, and people miss things even with clean boards. So the idea of people missing something with a messy board is, it's going to happen. But yeah, I do think clocks might be a necessary addition at some point. We've talked about it before, especially with Doran being a bit more popular, or maybe the natural Doran clock from game rounds is going to be a thing that's stopping from being prominent. I don't think that's a positive thing for the game, that people will see games where they're just kind of like sitting around waiting for the game to end. I don't think that that's a positive thing either. So yeah, we'll see. Yes, he did. Ariakas did stream the whole of the Canadian event on Twitch. Yes. I did get a chance a little bit to look at one of them, but not the whole day, just because of times and what I was doing. So yeah, cool. So that's Refuge and the Canadian Open, both positive events. By the sounds of it, both events attended well, and people who attended seem to enjoy them. We'll see how that all pans out in the future as well. Now, I did want to have a little look at another event that we've got ongoing, which is Farewell to 2022, which is approaching its kind of final weeks now. We've entered week 3, so we've got, I think, one more round, and then there's a top cut for the finalists. And I just wanted to stop in and see how things were going. We see Free Folk, one game, 100% win rate. Dwan took Free Folk, won one game and then retired from the event, which is hilarious. So Free Folk OP. We see Night's Watch kind of strong showing from Night's Watch. I know that Brett, for example, has been playing them a lot more, and Bob in the event as well. Bob picking up a loss to Willibunks, playing Lannisters. Played Nathan. Well done, Nathan. But yeah, Night's Watch having a strong showing, and Martell's having a relatively lackluster showing, with only one player still in contention, which is Larks. So yeah, not the time format where you've got effectively infinite time is showing that Martells aren't all they're cracked up to be, and that there is still a thing where skill and ways of playing around Martells is a thing. So people discussing, Martell's bad for the game, bad for the meta. Martell's not bad for the game. Doran might be unpopular, but Doran is not going to be the issue for competitive players. Maybe more for less competitive players who don't understand how to beat it, but then that would be a case of communicating that. If there is a solution, we can communicate the solution, and people will, over time, learn that. It might take a little bit longer for it to seep in, but it can be learned. So yeah, good to see that event going. I'm impressed by the kind of strength that Lannisters are having. Jesse and Willie at the moment. Okay, they've both got 3 games compared to a lot of others 2, but 3 for 3 Lannisters is pretty good. I have to admit, I've been playing a bit of Lannister again, kind of on and off, and I do enjoy Lannisters. I think Lannisters are a fun-ish faction to play, outside of a couple of decisions. Roose fine, Kevin fine, Tyrion fine. High Sparrow, certainly not something I would run myself, but certainly an interesting pickup. I hate some of the other faction commanders though. That I hate factions that don't rely on or don't have maneuverability tricks. It's just not how I play the game. I play the game with movement, and I think movement is the core functionality to how rank and flank games should work. So every time I see a game where movement, or a list where movement isn't as much of an option, it plays away from what I enjoy in the game and ultimately what I'm good at, I think. So yeah, Lannisters certainly with certain commanders just don't thrill me in that way. I can certainly think of Joffrey commander doing very little. Bad experiences with Joffrey. Yes, Abiscius is onto a Kickstarter right there. Print off a second or have a card for Doran. Doran is about the... I'm a big fan of NCU cards, by the way. If people didn't know, those across the pond might not know this. Those in the UK probably seen this. NCUs are about the only cards apart from your deck, obviously take your deck, but NCUs are the only cards I actually take physically in terms of unit cards and stuff to events, or things like that. So I've got Varamir's Eagle, Ygritte, Val, and Craster. This just happens to be my Free Folk stuff that I've got out at the moment. And I put them in these kind of card sleeves so I can throw them around the table, and also so they're easier to pick up because a card on the table can sometimes get too low. But specifically for influences, really useful to have these. They're big, they're chunky, they don't get lost, they don't get missed, they don't get wrecked when you're throwing them around the table as much. But also, NCUs are important to keep because your abilities keep, in my opinion, keeping track of the NCU like order tokens on them. You can flip them if they've got a once per game ability. That's the thing I enjoy doing. Baelish, Baelish, I just flip his card once he's used his once per time ability. That way there is no miscommunication between me and my opponent. This is this NCU's ability, and it has been used. I think if you are going down the route of just using random tokens, going down the just having order tokens near NCUs, it's like, hang on, how many tokens has Wendy got? Or like, has Baelish uses once per time ability because you've thrown a token away? Not a big fan of that, because it doesn't make it abundantly clear to your opponent unless you then explain it. If you explain it and you make it clear, then you can make it less of an issue. But I have seen people where they're like, oh, I've used my once per game ability this game, and there's no indicator anywhere that they've used it or not. That has kind of issues. Again, table management. But yeah, that was really random that I went off on that random tangent. But yeah, printing another Doran card, very useful for that exact reason. So your opponent can see. As a quick reference point, a lot of people haven't learnt Doran yet, haven't learnt the zones yet. Off the top of my head, I probably couldn't name all of them, but it's Crowns, Water Gardens on round 2, I think, and it's Swords and Bags, I think, on round 1. It's going to have to be checked. I know the round 1 and round 2, I think, and that's about it. And even then, I think I do. Let's check. Swords, so I think it's Swords, Bags, and then it's Water Gardens, Crowns. Then it's Horses and something. Is it Horses, Letters? Might be Horses, Letters. Yes. Crowns, Swords, Bags, Crowns, Water Gardens, Horses, Letters, and then everything else after that I don't care. It's not important. So yeah. Most other people probably won't remember that though. And rightly so, right? It's not the kind of thing that, to be honest, you need to remember. It's just random knowledge. So yeah. Anyway. Yes. Doran, NCU, time limits, printing off an extra copy of his card, all positive things. Also on that note, take poison cards with you, or poison tokens don't exist. If you've got poison cards, like attached cards like that, treat it like a tactics card, take it with you, throw it on the unit that's attached to, so that people can clearly see the effects of the poison. And read it if they need to read it. That's, again, something else I would do. I do similarly with Varamir's Eagle, for example, in Free Folk. So yeah. Cool. Table state and table organization. So, that kind of doesn't lead us into the next bit, but it kind of does, talking about tables. Tables, well, my next thing I wanted to look at was LVO. Now, the lists haven't been locked. We haven't seen what the breakdown and stats for the different factions is yet. We haven't necessarily got everyone on this list attending. Unfortunately, Swavek had to back out, for example. But the vast majority of players here are attending. You see, most of them have been kind of come on in the last week or so. 40 players on that list. 40 players signed up, and there are still some more people still to submit lists and sign up for the day itself. So LVO is looking like the largest event for the US, definitely, and I'm looking forward to it this weekend. So we've got the team tournament happening in Spain and this LVO event happening in US. I'm going to be trying to follow along with both, trying to follow the statistics of both, see who's doing well, see who's not doing well, and just generally follow the game from here. I'm really looking forward to see the results, looking to see the lists, and seeing how that all pans out. And of course, seeing if Martel's again having problems with round 4 Doran Water Gardens, seeing how that kind of pans out there. Cool. So, another thing that I was going to bring up, kind of like my last major topic for today, was or is going to be Tourney ground and kind of like where it is at the moment and where it's going to be. So obviously going to be looking at tournaments still, where possible. Certainly any big tournaments. So you 100% see me back next week talking about the events of LVO and about the Spanish team event. But generally speaking, yes, or Stefan also saying there might be a stream at LVO. Fingers crossed for a stream there. Yeah, so one of the big things that we talk about here, in case people forgot, is we talk about the news, and that is what fuels us and gives us kind of like information to go on, what's been going on in the game, where the game's going. Now the game has been it's been slow news for a while now, but we have entered true slow news time now. As a result, when there isn't much going on, people get maybe frustrated. People get we are frustrated with the balance, certainly. But also there's less to talk about. There's simply less to discuss from a competitive player's perspective, and that isn't to say that there isn't valuable knowledge there that could be imparted, but there is simply less to talk about. With that being said, still going to be focusing on communities, still going to have guests on talking about their experiences, their events, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to basically look to do a kind of summary, if you will, on each faction. Now, I know I did something about it on Starks before. I did something very similar to it with Free Folk myself. And we did Greyjoys last week with Mikkel, like looking at kind of like a standardized list build for what we could call competitive list building thinking. What I'm looking to do is I'm going to get some people on. I've got some people in mind. Haven't asked any questions yet. But if you also want to do it, let me know. I'm going to get people to come on and discuss list building from their perspective of different factions. It's kind of like a review of this is how I would build this faction for this current competitive meta. And also, Ilya's right, more streamed games. Yes, I'm going to be trying to organise some streamed games with lists suggested by you guys on a Monday night. Yeah, see how that one pans out. Because ELO is just a number, playing random lists. I also need to get some neutral commanders for badges, so I will be accepting some neutral commander options as well. I don't expect to win many of them. We'll see. But yeah, just playing some neutral commanders and playing some commander or lists on stream that people might want to view on a Monday night. I'm also looking at doing a couple of pieces that I need to put together, which will be premiering on a Monday night, but won't be live. For those of you who don't know what that means in YouTube language, it will be recorded content that will go live at the normal time, so the first viewing of it, so we can watch it live in chat like we normally would with Tourney Ground, still participate, but I won't actually be live on stream doing said thing. The reason being there is mostly because time zone differences. People at work. I would really love to catch up with people like Clarence. I'd really like to catch up with some of the LVO guys as well, hopefully next week. But again, time differences. People at work during the day, certainly in the US, makes it harder to organise these things. And in case of you didn't know, guys, people have said, "Oh, but Clarence has been on before, and Luke's been on before." In case people didn't know, Luke, Ariakas, lovely guys. They have both been off work. They've either taken a holiday day, or for Clarence, the schools have been closed because summer holidays, which is why he appears a lot more in the summer videos. They're not at work, right? Then they have taken the day off work to take time out of their day to appear on Tourney Ground. People perhaps didn't realise that. I don't know. I think that's like amazing. Honestly amazing. I do appreciate it massively from the guys over in the US. Especially, I really do. So happy that that's the kind of like level of commitment they're willing to put in. So yeah. And Abiscus saying, have I considered commentated games? Yeah, I have done. Part of it is editing time, which I currently don't have a lot of. And part of it is also finding good games to commentate. I might commentate on games, though, definitely, Abiscus. If there's games that I think are worthwhile looking at, I might look to see if I can do that. Ilya saying everyone should be granted paid time off to appear on Tourney ground, like jury duty. Yeah, because we're a bunch of criminal convicts that need the time off here. Well, I'm a convict, definitely. The number of people I've murdered in A Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah, and Carlo's definitely a convict. Carlo's murdered many a opinionated argument with accurate data. So criminals. We're a pair of criminals. We are. Yeah. So there's certainly some stuff like that. So it'll still be around, but it might just take different forms each week, depending on which guests I can get involved and who else I can get on the show, and ultimately what news comes out. And this is kind of like a kind of where we're at the moment. We will see where it all lands out. We'll see how it all kind of pans out up until the balance patch. And we'll talk about things. Carlo will return to talk about any news. Carlo will be returning to the show. He's taking a break away from the game a little bit, and taking a break from thinking about it. Certainly, and part of that is this show as well. I've been, to be honest, a little bit worn out with it, and I don't mean the game, but I just burnt out. Played my first game in like 2 or 3 weeks yesterday, and it was nice to have some time off. I'm probably not going to be playing as much, certainly, as I used to, because there are other things. There are other things I want to look at. But that doesn't mean to A Song of Ice and Fire and stats, anything like that, it's taking a back seat by any stretch. It's just that, yeah, exactly. Bob's right. The break was nice for him, and yeah, I'm enjoying the break. I'm enjoying doing some stuff, and this is going to sound really crazy to people. I can get sometimes a little bit obsessive with the way that I think. That doesn't mean like I have to do something all the time, but I'm certainly thinking a lot about something. And up until basically around Christmas, I had a break off not being at home that much. But up until that kind of period of time, I was thinking about A Song of Ice and Fire literally every day of my life. I would be thinking about lists and ways of beating certain things and countering this, that, and the other, and all kinds of things for A Song of Ice and Fire. During the working day, during the night, I'd go to bed thinking about it. Up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, really, after taking a break, and then I stopped thinking about it. I thought about today's show a little bit this afternoon and a little bit last night. I was like, oh, it's 20 grand tomorrow. What am I doing? And today I was like, what am I doing again? What did I say I was going to do? Yeah, that. And it's nice. It's nice not having to think about the game constantly. And I know people might say, oh, but why did you need to think about the game? But Bob's right. Yeah, you dream about it. You literally dream about games, or dream about like decision making, and dream about scenarios and things like this. Like, what happens if this, and this happens, and how do I do this if this happens? And Bob's right. It does consume you. So it's been refreshing to take a break. Refreshing not to have to think about it. And ultimately stopped putting pressure on myself. And that is a big thing. So yeah, I'll be back to it in due course, but it doesn't help that the meta is relatively stable. So taking a break means you can come back in kind of swinging straight away as well. There are so many different commander and faction combinations in this game. If someone is ever getting bored, just crank the jank level up a few notches and play some randos down at the LGS. Yeah, that is true, Imperial. You can do that. I play at the club that we play at's got a relatively small number of players, and you can definitely mix it up and play different things. And to some extent, that is good. For people who play less at LGSs, simply that isn't really the case. You get that opportunity in the same way. And yeah, for me, it's not necessarily how I play the game, but yeah, 100% is a good idea to kind of do that with. Badge hunting, do badge hunting. That's what my mission is. I got a bit tired of the badge hunting because all the stuff left is stuff I don't really want to have to play. I was talking to Ross last night after losing a close game to Ross last night. I just hate Ramsey Commander. I think Ramsey Commander is dog crap. And I know that he works kind of well in neutrals, and I know that some people will swear by him, and some people say he works well here and does well here. I hate him beyond belief. Hate him as a commander. I find he is so generically one-dimensional, so easy to play around as a commander choice, so easy to kind of like understand and beat. That when my opponent plays Ramsey against me, I no longer care, and I can run nearly anything in the game, and I no longer care. I don't think that they are running a good list. So Ramsey doesn't thrill me. And the other one that doesn't thrill me at all is fucking Dario. Because Dario, whereas Ramsey has a flavour, but I just don't like the flavour. It's like giving you it's like giving you lemon when you ask for strawberry. That's Ramsey for me. Dario is the most vanilla piece of vanilla you can possibly imagine. I honestly think that Dario is. Oh, you wanted flavorful ice cream where you could build lists and have fun? Here's Dario. Oh. So what do I do with this? This is just vanilla. There is no. Honestly, he's a commander for me that has literally zero substance. And it's okay to like vanilla, okay to like it, but he does not mix up gameplay or give you different options or make things interesting, in any opinion, in my view. So yeah, yes, Abiscus, you hate having to play Dario twice with Targs. Yeah, and believe it or not, the Targ version being worse is baffling. So yeah, those are the two commanders I've got left. I quite like Vargo. That's the thing. Vargo's fun. And when I say fun, I'm not going to say he's good, but I feel that Vargo has play. There are things you can do with Vargo. He's got redeeming qualities and interestingness. Roos, very good. Commander, very, very good commander. But Dario and Ramsey are just so lackluster. Not interesting to play, in my opinion. Yeah, Evan, attacking from bags without using Peter. Cool. If only there was a faction I cared about that. Oh, I suppose I could use Lannisters. But then I just take the crowns and attack with Kevin. Obviously, I might not be running a Kevin list. I might be running a Dario list. Why am I running Dario? Oh god, I just can't. This is saying Vargo scenes from the Martells. Yeah, Vargo's from the Martells. I like Vargo. I'm a big fan of Vargo Baratheons. I like Vargo Baratheons. I think Vargo Baratheons is hilarious. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it. So if people want lists to be played at some point, I'll probably let people know when I'm going to be back to actually playing lists. A little bit more when I'm going to be playing games more. But yeah, I'm going to be doing obviously tournament reviews still, looking at some faction like kind of overview style list building concepts, asking for the understanding behind the list, and yeah, just generally doing some content that side. And when we see Lycini Pirates and Brazen Beasts, which I'm kind of hoping we'll get to see some stuff about them and revealed soon-ish, then we'll get Carlo back in to talk about those and how he feels about those two units. I think the Brazen Beasts, kind of the most anticipated release for Targs. Targ players everywhere kind of going, ooh, this could actually be something that could make infantry better, even though the base deck sucks. And and all players everywhere going, how on earth are Lysini Pirates going to use the pillage tokens, and how on earth is the Greyjoy deck going to work with Lysini Pirates? Because it could be pretty good, or it could be garbage. You know, I'm much more of the opinion that it's probably garbage. I say garbage. I shouldn't say garbage, but you know, not as good as we hoped. So yeah, hopefully people will find that kind of stuff interesting. That side of the content changing a little bit in the meantime while we wait, and just generally, you know, mixing it up a little bit for players here as well. So, I thought British say rubbish. Yeah, we do say rubbish. Rubbish, garbage, crap. Yeah, they're all the same things for me. Garbage has more power behind it. Rubbish is quite a short word. Rubbish. Whereas garbage is garbage. You know, much a longer word. God, that was weird. It was like a Monty Python sketch there, breaking into woody words and tinny words. If anyone knows that sketch from Monty Python, you have good taste in comedy. So, yes, right. With that being said, I did say it was going to be a short episode this week. Garbage, as they all trigger on Greyjoy units. All of them? I am actually going to have to check this now, because I should know the deck. Iron Price doesn't require it to be Greyjoy only. Raiding Call doesn't require the pillage token from the bags to go on Greyjoy only. Yeah, so those two pillage mechanics don't care. Let's have a little look at any. Doesn't interact with pillage. Doesn't interact with pillage. Doesn't interact with pillage. Doesn't really interact with pillage. Does interact with pillage. Let's have a look. That's any unit. Okay, so the old way, Balon could interact with them. That's fine. Eric, pillage master, does interact, and does interact. So we're all good there. Asher NCU. We don't talk about Asher NCU. Yeah, Asher NCU is Greyjoy only, to be fair. Raiding Call does require affiliation, but remember it works on Greyjoy units. The pillage token can go anywhere. Baelor doesn't react with pillage, and Dagmar does some weird pillage shenanigans, but his cards don't interact with them. So yeah, knowledge paid in iron and loss of glory don't require Greyjoy. So yeah, I mean there is options for Lysini Pirates to appear in the pillage faction, which is hilarious because they might get picked up more than the actual pillage units inside the actual faction. Rip. So yeah, interesting to see those and Brazen Beasts when they do come down, and we'll talk about them. Talk about if they change anything up, if there's anything interesting, or maybe we'll see another Knights of Castle Rock. Castle Rock Honor Guard release of absolute sadness. Alrighty then. So as I said, short episode this week. I am going to see, even though I'm alone, I can still rattle on for an hour and 8 minutes. I am going to. So you're telling me there's a chance. Look at the events that we've got coming up in the near future. Now, the big two, as I said earlier, are LVO and the Spanish team tournament. Do check those out online. Do follow along with them. I do fully recommend it. We also do have a French event, which is supposed to be up to 60 players, happening in the north of France. I don't know where they're at. They have a lot of people signed up. Could be an interesting one to look at. Let's actually just quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hang on. I can't count. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 29 players so far for that French event, which is going ahead out of the potential 60. So there's another big event happening in France. Do check that one out. I think that would be quite an interesting one to see how this one pans out. A lot of the larger French names are there, certainly from the north of France. So yeah, there's another event to follow along on Stats with as well. Any other big events? There's a 24-player in Mainz. Another event in Leipzig. Yeah, so quite a lot of like 16 to 20 players. The Kingdom Gaming event is happening this weekend as well. For UK players, there's a 32-player event happening in Kingdom Gaming. They've got 10 people. They have actually sold more tickets than this. I think they've only got 10 tickets left, if I remember rightly. So I really hope that event goes well. Some of the guys from Microwave Express Train, and the Wardens of the Northwest, people I've met and talked to kind of since LGT and things like that, or LGT 1 and LGT 2. Really happy to see those guys making the event as well. So other events, let's actually go through and do them properly. So we've got an event happening in Russia this weekend, an event happening in Spain, a small event happening in A Coruña, Spain, another event happening in the large event happening in France, 2-dayer. There's another event happening in Barcelona, Spain this weekend. Event happening in Mainz in Germany. An event happening in Leipzig, Germany. An event happening in Poland. An event happening in Poland again. That's Wrocław and Gdansk. We've also got an event happening in Texas, Houston. The Forge. So the Forge did run some events last year, I believe. So it's good to see the Forge coming back on the radar as another running some more events. Pretty happy with that. We've got another event happening in Mairie-sur-Oise in France. Terribly butchered again. The Kingdom Gaming event happening in the UK. Another 30-point event happening in Manchester. This is Fanboy 3 are running like a small kind of taster event, I believe, in the Manchester area. It's all about trying to get some friendly gamers together. And yeah, I know they've got players signed up. It looks like they haven't, but they have got more people than that looking to attend on the day. Also, it looks like to be the Redcar Raiders Club event happening in Redcar this weekend, starting off. I think this is going to be like an ongoing league that they've got planned. So I'm really happy to see that kind of kicking off, going forward with their league. So yeah, a lot happening this weekend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Canada. I missed that Canada event, didn't I? January Clash. Dragon's Den Games. 11 events in Saskatoon, Canada. Do apologise, Canada. I missed you off there. So 10, 11 events there happening across the weekend or going forward. I think it's going to be a good time. I really look forward to seeing the results of LVO and the results of the team tournament. I really hope those go really well. Which is definitely this weekend. Yep. There we go. Oh, am I an idiot? Is it next weekend? It's next weekend. I keep thinking it's this weekend. Then next weekend. Jesus. So we'll definitely see how those kind of pan out next weekend. Not this weekend. Next weekend. I'm an idiot. Talked about them being hyped. So we'll talk about those when they come up. And I really look forward to those events. I am stoked to see the results there as well. And yeah, we'll get some people on to talk about events and talk about different factions, different game modes, everything like that. Kind of matchups and stuff, and building lists and talking about factions and playing games and seeing how it all kind of leads out as the weeks come on to the new balance patch. Houston Hype. Hope to film a match or two from the tournament. Good to see Imperial. Feel free to share them on the Discords as well. Seeing more content is always a good thing for the game. Well, thank you very much for everyone tuning in, signing up, watching out. I hope you've all enjoyed today's episode. I know it's been a bit of a short one, an hour and 15 minutes. By no stretch is anything that you're used to of the 3-hour, 4-hour, 6-hour marathons that we have done. There may be marathons like that again when the new balance patch, if the new balance patch drops, and we will look at kind of like doing a lot more with that side of the game and with content in the near future. But until then, guys, thank you very much for turning up as usual. I do appreciate the time and effort you guys dedicate to watching the show. And yeah, I will see you next week. Have a good one.
Ready? Aim!
There's too many.
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby!